Today we're going to discuss the 401k plan, which is one of the core retirement vehicles that you're going to have in your life if you work for a private nonprofit company. So if you go out and you get a job at, Coca-Cola, for example, you're going to be offered a 401k. You're definitely going to want to use the 401k, so it's crucial that you learn about this. If instead you're going to get a job at a nonprofit or work for the government like I do, you'll have something similar. So we don't have a 401k. We have something called a 403b and a 457b. And there's a tremendous amount of overlap from each of these different types of retirement vehicles. But today we're going to focus just on the 401k, which for most of you, you're going to end up with close to $1 million at retirement held in this 401k account. And we want to make sure we put as much in there as we can and make the right choices. What we're going to be talking about today is probably going to be worth tens of thousands of dollars to you if you don't otherwise learn this material elsewhere. So let's think about this individual here. Income of $80,000. This would be their federal income taxes based on their brackets, right? I'm assuming they're single. I'm just including just the brackets here from the up to the 22% level. And, I'm ignoring state taxes and everything. I'm just trying to keep things simple here. So if we just think about federal income taxes, this is how much they would pay. You should be able to solve for that. And this would be their net income. Okay? So this is how much they have left over. So what this person might decide to do, is only spend $56,610, leaving $10,000 to save. All right, so they've got $10,000 that they can save, right? And they can go to various places with this savings. They might open a savings account. But a lot of you have savings accounts. Maybe you don't know this. The interest you earn in your savings account is taxed as income. Not great, right? We don't generally want to be paying income taxes. So this person's going to be taxed as income. Any earnings they get will be put on top of their regular income. So they're probably going to pay a 22% tax rate here. Okay? So this would likely be a 22% tax rate, assuming their income stays the same over time. They could instead put their money in bonds. Bonds usually tax as income as well. So again, they're going to be taxed as income, which will be 22% tax rate. They'll also be taxed in Georgia as well, another 5.75% taxed on top of that. So essentially what you should recognize here is the money that you save, if you save it this way, gets taxed twice. The money that you had here in terms of your net income was already taxed once as income, right? So number one here is taxed as income. But if you save the money and earn interest, you get taxed again a second time, perhaps as income, or perhaps you might have some long-term stocks that you've held, which would be taxed as capital gains, right? Depending on how long you've held it. This might be taxed as capital gains at a 15% tax rate, or it could also be taxed as income if you've held it for less than a year. So here's the problem. Your money is going to get taxed like crazy unless you figure out a way to be strategic, okay? So if you have friends or you have family members who, say, I've got a bunch of Apple stock or a bunch of Amazon stock or something, usually the only way to buy individual stocks is to just buy it on money that's already been taxed. So if they have a lot of money in, Apple stock or Amazon stock or something, that means that they got taxed a lot on it. And whenever they sell that stock, they're going to get taxed again. We don't want to pay a bunch of taxes, okay? That's going to make us less wealthy in the future. And so starting today and for the next few videos, few days of videos, we're going to be talking about how to reduce your taxable income, okay? So let's enter the 401k. We can definitely at least avoid getting being taxed twice and only be taxed once. At least we can do that. But in some cases, we might figure out a way to be taxed not at all on some of our income, which is always best. So what we're going to be talking about here is something we might generically refer to as retirement vehicles. Another term for this might be tax-sheltered accounts. All right, so this is kind of like a dual definitions here. You might call these retirement vehicles, you might call them tax-sheltered accounts. But the bottom line is these types of account allow you to avoid taxes. right? They're accounts that allow you to avoid tax and earn interest. So if I want to buy stocks, I probably don't want to just take the money that I have in my bank account, right, and use it to buy stocks, because that money has already been taxed as income. Instead, the way the government has set things up, the best way for you to invest a lot of times is to never realize your income at all, okay? For this person here, what they would be better off doing is figure out a way to not get taxed on all of this income. And that's exactly what 401ks do. 401ks basically take money that would have been paid to you as income and throw them into essentially an investment account before you even have the chance to pay taxes. Okay, that's what a 401k does. So a 401k is a specific type of retirement account. So what a 401k would do for this individual here is greatly change the game that he's playing. Okay? So what he might decide to do is contribute $10,000 to a 401k. All right? A 401k is connected to your employer. So your employer will likely give you the opportunity to contribute to your 401k. And this will probably be set up with HR, with human resources. So if you just get your job and you just get paid the full amount, there will be no 401k. You have to actively go in and set up your 401k account in most cases. And when you set up that 401k, it's going to change the way you're paid. Your paycheck will be smaller because some of your money will not come to you. Some of it will instead go to this 401k account. All right? And what that will do is, if you contribute $10,000 to the 401k, it will drop your taxable income down to $70,000. Okay? So $10,000 that would have been taxed will instead go to your 401k. All right? And what the beauty of this is, see, as it enters this 401k, it's not taxed. So normally, you know, if you wanted to invest money in stocks, you would have to have already paid taxes on it. Any money that you have right now in your pocket, you've already paid income taxes on it, right? But if you put more money into your 401k, you avoid that first round of taxes. You don't pay any taxes on it at the beginning there, okay? So you now got $10,000 in this account, and your income is going to go down to $70,000. That would also drive down your federal income taxes. Essentially, your income now would only be $70,000. So this 22% tax bracket that you're currently paying most of your money in, that top chunk of your money is being taxed at 22%. You're going to avoid 22% on that $10,000. All right? So that $10,000 avoids $2,200 in taxes, right? If you would realize that extra $10,000, if you had earned that extra $10,000 as income, it would have fallen into this tax bracket here and been taxed at 22%. So by putting it into your 401k, you basically save $2,200 in taxes right off the bat, okay? So to put it another way, if I wanted to realize the income and invest it, that money would only be $7,800 that instead is now $10,000 into a 401k account. I hope this is all making sense, and it certainly will as we go through all of the examples, because this is the game for like a large chunk of the remainder of this course, is figuring out ways to use tax-sheltered accounts. Okay? So their income taxes would be driven down by $2,200. So that would be now $170. You should be able to solve for that. If you just use our traditional method of solving for $70,000 in taxes, you would see that their income taxes goes down by $11,170. Okay? Their net income is going to go down, but it's not going to go down by $10,000. They're not losing $10,000 because they're not having to pay taxes on the full $10,000, okay? So the really nice thing about these types of accounts is you avoid income at the top. Of your income. So in other words, when they pull that $10,000 essentially out of your income, when that $10,000 enter your 401k, again, it's pulled out at the top of your income. So your income goes from $80,000 to $70,000, allowing you to remove taxes at the 22% level, which is really, really, really nice. Okay, so that's what all of these tax sheltered accounts are essentially going to do. Okay. So to think about basically another demonstration of how this works, you can think of it this way. Typically, your income comes in, it's taxed, all right? So this is tax number one. So your income turns into your net income and it's taxed for the first time, all right? You're going to spend some of it, right? You're always going to spend something, regardless of whether or not you're using 401k, you're going to spend some money. Not much we can do about that. But you can think of it this way. The part that's spent is spent, whatever, but the part that's saved is going to be taxed again. Could be capital gains tax, could be income taxes, depending on the type of investing you're doing with that money, okay? With the 401k, you kind of change things up a bit. All right, your money that's spent is now compartmentalized differently than the money that you save, okay? So the money that you spend will be taxes, income, you'll get your net income and you'll spend it. But an entirely separate batch of income will go to your 401k and not be taxed at all, okay? So as it enters the 401k, it's not taxed at all here, all right? It will only be taxed when you realize this money way into the future, okay? So not only do you avoid this income taxes, you also avoid capital gains taxes. For example, if you own stocks, you're going to get paid out in dividends, right? Those dividends come in, you pay taxes on it over and over again. So if you have stocks for 30 years of dividends, these payments are rolling in, you're getting taxed over and over again. You avoid all of that. You can buy and sell different investments in that 401k. Right, so you got a S&P 500 index fund and you don't want it anymore, you can sell it and you don't pay any taxes on that. While it's in the 401k, it's basically in this house that the government can enter, okay? This house right here, the government cannot go into. They cannot go in and get any taxes from it. So as long as you keep the 401k intact, no one can pull any money out of it, all right? So it's going to grow and grow and grow. The house is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're only going to get taxed when you withdraw from this fund many years into the future. This is a true retirement fund. You can't pull the money out tomorrow. You have to wait until you're basically in retirement. But when you pull this money out in retirement to spend, then it's taxed as income. And hopefully, when it's taxed as income here, you can figure out a way to get taxed at a lower rate. Most people, when they're retired, have a lower income, so they might slip back into one of these lower tax brackets. So you could have earned the money now and paid 22% on that money in your 401k, but by waiting until you're close to retirement to withdraw the funds, you might be paying a lower tax rate because your income is lower. It's an all very convoluted, complex game figuring out how to do this perfectly, but the overall goal is just to avoid taxes. And there's really no way to use a 401k in a way that harms your taxes. It can help, and it can potentially help a whole bunch if you use proper planning. In regards to 401ks and other types of accounts, you're going to have two different ways to choose to invest. You can choose to invest in a traditional account. That last example we did in the previous video, that actually was a traditional 401k. And the way a traditional 401k works is you choose to avoid taxes now, understanding that you will pay income taxes in the future. So if I put $10,000 in a 401k, that $10,000 is not taxed now, but many years down the road, when I withdraw from that fund, I will then pay income taxes on it. That's a good deal because I don't have to ever pay any capital gain taxes or anything off the investments. I only pay income taxes, and it's possible that my income will be smaller in the future, and thus my tax rate is lower in the future. Okay, so this is one way to do it. Again, if I put $10,000 in, I'm not taxed now, not taxed on any of my investments or anything now. But when I withdraw the money, I'll then be taxed. That's a traditional account. The other option is to invest in a Roth account, such as a Roth 401k. Okay? With a Roth 401k, you're basically switching when you're going to pay taxes on it. Traditional, pay taxes later. Roth, pay taxes now. You're actually choosing to pay taxes now. Okay? So if I put $10,000 into a Roth 401k, essentially that money that goes into the Roth 401k will have already been taxed when it goes in. Okay? So if I elect to put money into my Roth 401k, the money is going to be taxed and then go into my Roth 401k. Okay? So in the future, I will basically never pay taxes again on that money. So if I put $10,000 into a Roth 401k, my money is first taxed. Maybe it takes $13,000 to make that contribution. So I take $13,000 in income, tax it, let it be taxed. Then it goes into my Roth 401k. Maybe there's only $10,000 left, but now I never pay taxes again in the future. So when I withdraw from this money in the future, I'm completely done paying taxes. So in both of these cases, the beauty is you're only paying taxes once. The other thing is you can be strategic in terms of when you want to pay taxes. A lot of you guys, when you first get your first job, right? You graduate and you get your first real job, your income is going to be pretty low at that point in time. So what do you think you want to do? Do you want to pay traditional or Roth? If you contribute to your 401k, do you want to go traditional or do you want to go Roth? Or put another way, do you want to pay taxes now or later? Well, if your income is low and you expect it to go up, it's usually advantageous to go Roth. So when you guys get your first job, you're probably going to contribute almost all of your money to the Roth 401k that you plan to save. So this is best when your income will rise over time. So actually what that means is most of you will choose the Roth 401k when you get your first job because your first job, maybe you're making $45,000. Your tax rates are pretty low at that point. But 30 years down the road, you might be making $150,000. And when you're making $150,000, if you need to access any of your 401k funds, it's going to make your tax burden really high because you're already being taxed so much, right? The higher your income is, the higher the tax rate is that you pay. So you would like to realize your money. You would like to effectively earn your money when your income is low, okay? Conversely, this account is best when your income will drop. This is a bit of a simplification, but that's the way we're going to start is with keeping this as simple as we possibly can. It's pretty complex already. But in general, the traditional is best when your income will drop over time. So for example, let's say that I decide this is true, I want to retire at age 51, okay? If I want to retire at age 51, we're going to learn that if I retire at age 51, there's going to be many years before I get any income. Social Security usually doesn't kick in until your 60s. I've got a pension plan. It doesn't kick in until my 60s. So I got a bunch of years here where I'm not earning anything. Well, it would be really nice to have a traditional 401k in that example. Because if I'm earning zero income and then I withdraw from my traditional 401k when my income is zero, I will pay very little taxes on that money earned because, when your income is low, your tax burdens are very small. So if I'm making $100,000 now, but I know I'll be making $0 in 20 years, I want to do a traditional 401k now, which means avoid taxes now. Avoid taxes now when my income is high, and choose to pay taxes in the future when my income is low. So you're going to choose to go traditional or Roth based on what you expect your income to do over time. Of course, it's always kind of tough to know. So for a lot of people, as they get into the middle of their career, what they'll actually do is do both. They might decide to do half of their 401k traditional, half Roth. And they're diversifying in a sense. They don't know what tax rates will be in the future. They don't know what their income will be in the future. So effectively, they're going to diversify and say, let's cover our bases here. If my income goes up, well, at least I've got some Roth funds, right? If my income goes down, well, at least I have some traditional funds. So it gives me a little bit of flexibility. This can get pretty complicated when you think about your specific case, and hopefully you're going to be capable of figuring out your situation over time based partially on what you learned in this class. All right, so let me try to show you what this looks like. I'm just going to use a really simple example here just to keep the math nice and clean. So let's say my income is $40,000. Generally speaking, income of $40,000, I'm probably going to go Roth 401k because my tax rates are pretty low anyway. But let's think about this here and keep the math as simple as we possibly can. My taxes, if I realize this full $40,000, can be solved like this. All right, just focusing on federal income taxes. Not worrying about Georgia or anything else for this moment. All right, so this is the same type of stuff we've been doing. Let me solve for this and see what I get here. What you would see is the taxes that this person pays is $4,602.50. I'm going to write this down here so I can remember this because we're going to need it here in a bit. All right, so that would be their taxes, okay? And if they don't contribute to a 401k or anything, this is what's going to happen, all right? They'll pay $4,602.50 in taxes. So, you go to the HR office and you say, I would like to open up a 401k. A lot of times, in regards to your 401k, they're going to set you up with a 401k or give you information early on, but in some cases, they may not give you much information, and you're going to need to push in order to make this happen. And you're certainly going to want to do it because not having a 401k when it's offered to you is like a 6 or 7 figure mistake, and you do not want to make that mistake. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people who did not contribute to their 401k, especially when they were young. So what you might decide to do here is make a $5,000 traditional 401k contribution, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to drive down your income to $35,000. Now your income is still $40,000, right? But in regards to the way the government views your income, I'm going to put a little asterisk there just to recognize that based on the way the government views your income, this is what they see now. So when they look at your tax filing, they see an income of $35,000, and it's almost like that 401k for them doesn't even exist. So that 401k will have $5,000 in it, like that. Okay? Thus, your taxes now will drop. Whoops. Let's see what that comes out to. So your taxes comes out to $4,002.50. And so effectively, see, you lose $600 in taxes, okay? Another way to have solved that is to recognize that $5,000 is no longer taxed, okay? So another way I could have solved for this is just to recognize, and I wish I had a bigger board here, that my tax savings is $5,000 times the 12%, okay? In other words, remember the income is taken off the top. So when I contribute $5,000 to a traditional 401k, my income is reduced by $5,000 in this bracket, in my top tax bracket, okay? It could also spill over into a second bracket, and that's where the math kind of gets complicated. I don't think we're going to do one like that, at least not now. But it's also possible it could move you across brackets. So for example, if you were earning $42,000 and then contributed $5,000 to a 401k, some of the money would be saved at a 22% tax bracket, and some would be saved at the 12% tax bracket. So it can get pretty complicated, all right? But, I don't think we necessarily need to think about those specific cases in this class, at least not now. So you save $600 in taxes, and then you need to know what happens next, okay? The money in your 401k will grow and grow and grow because you're going to invest it. You're going to invest it in index funds and mutual funds and things like that. And then when you withdraw it in the future, likely when you're retired, you will then pay income taxes on it. So you're still going to pay income taxes, but you're not going to have to worry about paying any of the investment taxes, right? Normally when you buy stocks and bonds, you end up paying income taxes or capital gains. You avoid all of that. And maybe this person has been strategic. Maybe they know their income is going to be zero or very low in the future. So it's not such a big deal to have to pay income taxes in the future. Okay? So the traditional account, again, works best when you think your income is going to go down. So now let's think about what would happen with a Roth account. All right, so with a Roth account, which I'm going to write up here now, your taxes would actually be the same as somebody who didn't contribute to a 401k at all. Remember, with a Roth account, you're choosing to pay income taxes now, okay? So the money is going to be taxed regardless. So your taxes would end up being the full amount that we solved for in the past of $4,602.50. That would be your taxes, okay? So if you contribute, let's say $2,000 to a Roth 401k, what you should recognize is this money was already taxed at 22%. It will also be pulled off the top. So this $2,000 that you put into a 401k, and this math is a little weird, but what you should recognize is if you contribute $2,000 to a 401k, it actually requires more than $2,000 to do so because you're going to have to pay taxes on it, okay? Let me do the math real quick, and this is not something I'll test you guys on, but what I know, I'm not going to worry about showing you guys this now, but this will actually take $2,564 in income to generate. So effectively, if I tell my employer I would like to contribute $2,000 to a Roth 401k, what they're going to do is take the amount of income I need, tax it in order to get to that $2,000 level, okay? So $2,000 contributed to a Roth 401k is more expensive than $2,000 contributed to a traditional 401k, which is kind of complicated, kind of confusing, isn't it? But unfortunately, that's the way it is. All right, so the beauty of it here is now, though, that in terms of the math and everything, we're kind of done in a way. The beauty here is now this $2,000 is never taxed again. So if you withdraw this money in the future, you don't have to pay taxes. Any investing you do with the money in the account is not taxed. And when you withdraw from the money in the future, it's not taxed. So this is a great account to have when you know that your income is going to go up over time. If I think I'm going to be earning, $1 million a year when I'm 70, well, then having a Roth 401k will be really nice because I don't have to pay any income taxes when I withdraw from it, okay? If I have the goal that I would like to buy a $500,000 beach house in the future, it's not so smart to pull $500,000 out of a traditional 401k because that $500,000 would all be taxed at the same time at a very high tax rate. But if I pull $500,000 out of a Roth 401k, I don't pay any taxes at all. So the Roth 401k is often more flexible because you basically can ignore the tax ramifications when you withdraw the money in the future. All right, so that's the traditional versus Roth. And certainly, okay, with everything we're doing today, make sure you go through the worksheets and do the problems. That might be even more important than the videos. If you're not practicing those worksheets, I think this is just going to be overwhelming for you. Now that we know a little bit about the basics of what the 401k does and the difference between traditional and Roth investments, we're now going to get into some of the rules for 401k plans. And you're going to want to know these rules well if you have a 401k because it's crucial to plan for your retirement that you understand how your 401k works. So let me give you some details here. It must be provided by your employer. It's always possible that your employer chooses not to offer a 401k for whatever reason, generally speaking, though, they're going to offer a 401k, and if they don't, that's a pretty big red flag. I've had a few students in the past that got job offers for companies that didn't have a 401k, and to me, that's pretty bizarre and basically shows that they either don't value their employees or they're very disorganized, because operating a 401k usually doesn't cost them any money. However, it can cost them money if they choose to give you this little perk, and most 401ks do provide this perk. 401k plans usually offer a company match, which is probably something you've already heard of. Company match for a 401k basically just means that when you put money into your 401k account, your company will put money in too. So not only do you avoid taxes when you put money into your 401k, but the company will also add money to it. So this is basically just free money. And it always makes me a little sick in the stomach when I hear of people that are not contributing to their 401k, especially when they have a 401k company match. So they might be able to put $1,000 in their 401k and the company give them an extra $1,000, and they're choosing not to do that. Lots of people do that. They choose not to put into their 401k, and they're just missing out on free value there. So you definitely, when you're going in and interviewing for jobs, when you're getting job offers, you definitely want to ask about their 401k, because that can be a big difference in money from one company to the next. Typically, your 401k will be managed by a large investment firm, and you do not need to know the name of these firms, but I'm going to give you a few just in case this helps you remember. These happen to be the exact three that I'm offered here at Georgia College. I don't have a 401k. I have something called a 403b, which is very similar. But I'm offered TIAA-CREF, VALIC, and Fidelity. And these are big financial organizations that do a lot. You can buy, for example, you can buy Fidelity index funds. Fidelity has index funds you can buy. Fidelity also offers banking in some cases, and they also organize these 401ks. So if you go work for, Dell Industries is going to probably say, we have two options. You can invest with VALIC or Fidelity, and in those options, there will be different types of funds for you to invest in. So when you go open up a 401k, don't arbitrarily just choose one of these companies. You first want to see what they offer, because generally they'll have very different opportunities, different types of funds available that have different expense ratios. And I can tell you from my experience, this middle one here, VALIC, usually has very high expense ratios for their funds. So, you might just arbitrarily choose, I'm going to go with VALIC when you get your first job, and that might cost you $50,000 over the life of your career. So you really want to look at these investments, because we know expense ratios are a big deal. Connected to that idea, you will have the ability to invest in mutual funds, index funds, etc., things like that, but no individual stocks or bonds in most cases. The only counter to this is sometimes the company itself will let you buy stock in itself. So if you work at Coca-Cola, I think they give you the option to buy Coca-Cola stock in your 401k. But otherwise, if you're investing in a 401k, they're going to give you mutual funds and index funds to invest in. Okay, mutual funds, index funds, you can leave your money in cash if you wanted to. You can put it into some sort of money market account, which will give just a tiny bit of interest. But for most people, that stuff doesn't really matter. They're going to choose index funds or mutual funds. Remember, index funds are passively managed, usually have low expense ratios, and mutual funds are typically actively managed with higher expense ratios. You might also have the opportunity to invest in funds that are all stocks, all bonds, or some combination between the two. So if you open up your 401k with Fidelity, for example, you might go on there and find out they have 80 different funds to choose from. Some are all stocks, some are all bonds, some are a combination in between, and then there's some sort of unusual ones that basically carry no risk at all, okay? The reason they don't give you individual stocks is, one, it would be overwhelming for them to deal with all those individual stock and bond choices. But two, if you invest in individual bonds or stocks, especially stocks, you have to worry about the cash flow of dividends coming in. And so cash would just start coming into your account via dividends, and you would have to then go back in and buy more stock. It would just be very complicated. The way these index funds and mutual funds work is, if there's any dividends in the 401k, they just automatically buy the index or mutual fund again. So for example, if you have an S&P 500 index fund in your 401k and you earn dividends, the dividend will automatically just buy more of that index fund again. Any payments that go out, just buy the index fund again and again and again. So in that way, you don't have to worry about, logging into your account and figuring out what to do with your money. Your money will automatically be managed. And that's what these companies are trying to do. Set up a system where your money is automatically managed once you make your initial choices. So I might set up my account and say, I want to go 80% S&P 500 index fund and 20% mutual funds in an index fund, and then I never have to touch it again. It will just automatically adjust that and make the new purchases for me over time. Typically, contributions to the 401k will be made on a paycheck to paycheck basis. So if you're wondering, could I really go into my HR office and say I would like to make a $10,000 contribution to my 401k? Could you really do that? Chances are actually no. You probably couldn't do that because they're probably just going to say, no, we don't allow that. But two, you have to realize the income in order to do it. So if you go into your HR office and say, I'd like to make a $10,000 contribution, you can't put your current money in there. It has to come from the payment into your account. So when the money gets paid into your account, that's when it goes to your 401k. If you go to them and say, I'd like to buy $10,000 worth of 401k, they're going to say, well, that's not your income. Your income is connected to your 401k. All right? So generally what people do is they set it up on a paycheck to paycheck basis. So they might say, I want to do, $200 a month in traditional 401k contributions, and then that will automatically be pulled from their paycheck over time. And usually that's a really good way to do it because it allows you to gradually buy stocks over time, which we'll see in the future is really a nice way to set up purchasing stock. Okay? So you'll automatically be purchasing, and I'll tell you, over the years, you'll be so shocked at how much money you have in your 401k account. We'll do some math in the future just to show how much you could possibly gain, but if you're putting in $10,000 to your 401k every single year until you retire, you're going to be a millionaire most likely. That's all it takes in most cases. All right, so the 401k, you can go traditional or Roth, right? You can invest in various types of funds, mutual funds and index funds primarily. And then you will have the opportunity to withdraw in the future. And to be very clear, this is the one big downside of having a 401k, is that it is not very flexible. Okay? If I just earn income and then go and buy stock, the beauty of having that stock now is I can withdraw it whenever I want. I'll have to pay probably capital gains tax on it, but I can withdraw it whenever I want. So if I'm saving money for a house, that might be a decent way to do it. If I'm saving money for a house, I don't want to put it into a 401k because a 401k is a retirement vehicle. It's not about purchases you're going to make 3 years from now. It's about purchases you're going to make when you're 70 that are funded by your 401k account. So here's a number I want you to remember. This 59.5 is a key number. That age 59 and a half is when your 401k will become available to you in 95% of the cases that we deal with, okay? So your 401k, if you've got $1 million in your 401k, you're probably not going to want to touch it until you hit 59 and a half. Then you can withdraw from your 401k, but if it's traditional, of course, you'll then pay income taxes on it. So it becomes available at age 59 and a half. If earlier, you pay a 10% withdrawal fee. And of course, you're also going to have to pay taxes if it's a traditional account. So if I got $1 million in my 401k and I decide I want to pull it out when I'm 50, I'm going to immediately pay 10% taxes. So that million will turn into 900,000. Plus, I'm then also going to pay income taxes. So for that reason, you don't really want to think about cashing out your 401k in 98% of the cases. Every once in a while, there's a good reason to cash out your 401k, but those reasons are usually very specific to individuals. In most cases, you don't touch your 401k until you get to 60. There are some extreme cases where that is not true. For example, you may be able to make hardship withdrawals. Hardship withdrawals being like a key term here. Good idea to know what these are. There's various reasons why you might be able to make a hardship withdrawal. Maybe the most important one is if you get really sick. So let's say you get cancer at age 52. At that point, you could file for a hardship withdrawal, which basically means you get to withdraw the money and not pay that 10% fee. You'd still have to pay income taxes if it's a traditional 401k, but you would avoid the fee. Right now, in June of 2020, this is actually a big deal because they're basically letting anyone who's been financially affected by the coronavirus to withdraw. So, there's no telling what laws may happen in the future, but at this very moment, you actually can withdraw from a 401k pretty easily. I could probably withdraw from my 401k right now if I wanted to. I could claim, I've lost so much money in the stock market that I've been financially affected, or I haven't been able to find side income because of this coronavirus. I could probably make some sort of claim like that and then withdraw from my 401k. But I don't want to do that because I still would pay income taxes, and I don't want to pay that right now. So there may be reasons you're able to withdraw this in the future. They may even let you withdraw it sometimes to buy your first house, but typically that's not the case. All right, so generally, when you think 401k, think retirement plan. More details, more things to know. So you also, something you probably won't really care about so much right now, but it's important to know in the future that once you hit age 70 and a half, you're going to have to make withdrawals. And you might be thinking, well, once I'm 71 years old, I'm going to want to make withdrawals anyway. Well, you might not really want to make withdrawals. You might be in a scenario where you've got Social Security payments coming in, you've got money in other accounts that are available, and you really would prefer not to touch your 401k. But unfortunately, they're going to force you to withdraw from these 401k accounts. I don't entirely understand the logic of this rule, but what we do know is 401ks are usually traditional. And when you withdraw from a traditional account, it is then taxed. So they're basically forcing you to create a taxable event so that the government can basically make some money off of you. So that might be the logic behind this rule. This rule in 2020 has been suspended. You don't actually have to make any hardship withdrawals. So again, these things can change, but typically this is something you have to know. This is called, by the way, a required minimum distribution. And it turns out if you don't do this, you get some huge fees that you have to pay if you make this mistake. So if you don't make your RMDs when you're supposed to, I can't remember the exact fees, but the fees are really big. Something like, I don't even want to guess, but I was pretty shocked. It could be thousands and thousands of dollars per year that you forget to make these withdrawals. So you definitely want to consider this in the future. This is like 50 years in the future for most of you guys. I know you're not too worried about it, but I'm making a note of it now because this is sort of a negative, right? This is a bad thing that you have to do this. So those are called RMDs. So if you hear me talk about RMDs in the future, this is what I'm referring to. This is something that applies to not only 401k accounts, but a lot of other accounts we're going to talk about. What about if you leave your job? If you leave your job, this kind of puts you in an awkward situation where you have a 401k that's tied to your former employer. And this is kind of a mess. My wife's jumped around jobs a good bit, and she's got these little 401ks in a bunch of different places, which is super annoying, to be honest. But what you can do is you can choose to leave. You can choose to leave the 401k with the old employer. That's one thing you can do. Of course, then don't forget about it. My mom forgot about a 401k she had until just a couple of years ago, and then suddenly she got some mail. They tracked her down and were like, "You've got $40,000 in this 401k account." She didn't know she had. So she was lucky. She was able to get it back. But you don't want to forget about your money in these 401k accounts. So you can leave them in your 401k at your old company, but you want to make sure you know it's there so you can access it in the future. That might not sound like a big deal, but if you leave a job at 23, it might be hard to remember when you're 60, 70 years old that money is there. So you can leave it there, or oftentimes you can roll it over. To your new 401k. All right, so if you got a 401k in your old job and a 401k in your new job, oftentimes you're given the opportunity to what's called roll that money over into your new account. It's not always offered. Part of the problem is if you go to a new job, maybe it's a nonprofit, they don't have a 401k. Well, then they probably won't give you the ability to do this. So it really depends, all right? Not everyone gets a 401k. So this is just something you sort of have to be worried about. In the future, you're going to have lots of things to be concerned with, lots of files in your cabinets that are keeping track of all this stuff. And this is definitely not one you want to forget, because if you leave $5,000 into a 401k, 40 years from now, it's going to be worth a lot of money. So you don't want to forget about it. So just to sort of summarize what we've talked about so far with 401ks, next video, we're going to think more about those company matches and how those play in. But let's think of sort of the actionable parts of this. I always want to think about what's actionable, right? Required minimum distributions, not really actionable for you right now. There's nothing you can do about those. Remembering them now is probably not even that useful, because 50 years in the future, you're probably going to have to relearn these things anyway. But what is actionable? What do we need to make sure we understand now? Because you guys are just, most of you, a couple of years out from getting your first job. So we need to recognize what's important and what we need to know right now. So some key things to think about. All right, and I'm thinking about the mistakes that I see people make when I'm thinking about these options up here. Picking your mutual funds or index funds. Remember, think about the vendors. The vendors we were talking about earlier, like Valak, TIAA-CREF, Fidelity, Charles Schwab being another one. When you start with a company, they may give you vendor options. Look and see what those vendors have to offer. Don't just arbitrarily choose one. It's a big problem to arbitrarily choose, because not only if you arbitrarily choose are you going to get a company that maybe isn't good, but also the types of people who do that will often call up the company. So they'll call up Valak and say, what should I invest in? We talked about this before, right? If you call up a company and say, what should I invest in? They're going to give you something with high fees. So you've got to manage your own account. And part of managing it is you picking the account. Call them up and say, I've chosen you because of this low expense ratio fund that I have, right? So they understand that you're smart and you're not going to get screwed over. So picking mutual funds, you definitely want to look at fees. You want to think about goals, what you need to invest in. And this can get pretty messy here, because what you're going to see is in the future, you're going to have a 401k account. All right. Most of you will have a 401k. Most of you will have something called a Roth IRA. Most of you are going to have an HSA account. And these are all accounts that are kind of like the 401k in that, they allow you to plan for retirement. They give you the chance to invest in index funds and everything. But basically, you're going to want to piece together all this information. Maybe your 401k only has good bond offerings. Well, then that's where your bonds should be, and you should put stocks in your other accounts. So it all sort of fits together in this big web of information. So when you're thinking about the goals, there's a lot to consider. You want to think about risk, your retirement age, retirement spending. All of this stuff really matters. And I put this here because for most people, most of you that are watching this video, the most money you will ever have in your life in any account is your 401k account when you're about 60 years old. And unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they just set up a 401k and say, put $200, $300 a month into my 401k, and they leave it that way for basically their entire career. That's not a disaster, okay, because they're putting a lot of money in. But the problem here is they haven't really thought about what they're going to need, okay? You don't want to save too little when you're working. And also maybe you don't want to save too much, because you can't take it with you after you die, right? So you would need to think about what your goals are in retirement. Do you really want to make it rain when you retire? Or do you want to basically sit at home and read books when you retire? Those are two very different levels of expenses that you would have. So all of this needs to be connected to your overall financial plan. In that same vein, we need to think about Roth versus traditional, which is a really tough choice for a lot of people. If you think you might retire early, well then traditional makes sense, because if you're not earning any income in your 50s, you definitely want to be actually earning income taxes then. Earning income so you can pay taxes on it. So the traditional will be very good. So you want to think about when you're going to retire in order to choose which is better, Roth or traditional. Do you plan on working till you're 80? Well, if you're working till you're 80, you probably want to go Roth with your first job, because you're going to be earning income for so many years. Your first year is probably one of your low income years as an employee. So you want to be paying taxes in that scenario. And then, like I said, just making note of this now, we're not there yet, but we need to think about other vehicles. 401ks are great when they give you a 401k match, and they're good when you don't have a 401k match, but they're not the only vehicle available to you. So don't do that thing that a lot of people do where they just put money in their 401k and do nothing else. We need to think about those other options that are available, and that comes in the very next 2 videos in this class.